back to Scaling with Samir. Today, I am super pumped to be featuring my next guest because not only is he a legend, I mean, the guy's a legend. Like, he's literally worked at some of the most iconic brands you've ever heard of or known, and you absolutely know them. But he's solved major problems. He's launched into every market you could possibly think of. He's got experience from A to Z, from multi-channel distribution to marketing tactics to you name it. He's been to more countries than me, that's just very, very rare. And he's ran circles around me in that. And so I feel like we've got a lot of really interesting things to talk about. And I'm super pumped to be talking with John Plys, the CEO of Precious Moments. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Samir. Pleasure to be here.
I'd love for you to just kind of kick things off and tell us maybe a brief introduction on yourself.
Yeah, no problem. So I started my venture in what I would call sales, in the sales arena, when I was 5 years old. My dad was a route salesman for a potato chip company called Jay's. And at that time, you were allowed to bring your kids to help you on the truck. So essentially, just like a bread guy or a chip guy or soda, the truck's just inventory on wheels. The biggest thing was selling. So you had your territory and you had all your customers, whether it be grocery stores, convenience stores. And, we had a cycle of every day what to sell. And at those days, you made commission. You didn't make a salary. So you got paid what you sold. And my dad's commission was 10%. So he'd say, hey, I'll pay you 10% of my 10%. Well, I'm thinking I'm getting paid 10%. I'm really getting paid 1%. So I took that as a challenge, and I used to go and sell. As we went into the stores, he'd go crazy because we'd run out of inventory in a truck. Had to go all the way back to the warehouse, which we call the barn, right? Pick up more inventory and go back out. But I got like the high from it. My dad was, I would say, my first mentor, really teaching me the ins and out of merchandising, planogramming, selling, feature advantage benefits, really getting into, brand equity, how to take care of the product, how to merchandise it, how to pop and lace, and really how to talk to merchants about what's the best, for them from a profitability per square inch of what they're going to put on display. And, so my dad was dynamic at that. He was great. And I took that with me. And, then after I was in college, I needed a job. So I went to the potato chip company and I unloaded trucks. I unloaded tractors and, unloaded that. And finally, some guy got sick, and the warehouse, which called regional manager boss, came and said, hey, I need someone to run the guy's route. I said, I can do it. And he goes, what? I said, I've been doing this since I was 5. So I went out there and lo and behold, I did great. And then that turned into a vacation spot where I did everyone's vacations to when a spot opened up. I then became a route sales guy. And then from there, about 3 years later, they wanted to promote me to a district manager. Now there was 40 district managers within the company, and each district manager had, anywhere from 15 to 20 route salesmen. And there was 26 distribution centers. And lo and behold, they put me in the district of my dad. So now I'm my dad's boss, right? And I'm thinking, my God, I'm going to get killed. He's just going to just eat me alive. And plus all these other guys saw me as a little kid jumping on a route truck with my dad. So I was thinking, they're not going to respect me. So my dad took me to the side and he said, hey, because I'm proud of you. He said, you got a challenge ahead of you. He said, they're all laughing. He said, why do you think they come to work every day? I said, I don't know. He said, to make money. Figure out a way to have each one of these guys make more money. You do that, you're going to be their best friend. And that's what I did. So I put programs together, really looked about how to merchandise, really looked at what is the hot button for merchants. And the biggest thing I learned right away is how to keep things simple, how to hit the easy button for not only the route sales guys, but for the retailers and for the buyers, so they can make easy decisions, easy money, and where everybody wins. And, that's the biggest thing that I learned. And as I moved along, quickly I became district manager to region manager to area vice president to executive vice president to then running the company. So when 40 years, when my dad retired, when he was with the company, I was the president of the executive of the whole company running it. So, I mean, I had a great mentor, Tom Howe, was from Conagra, and God, he taught me so much. He was fabulous. So being executive vice president from there in sales and marketing, then launched me. We sold the company, and then I had relationships with Ty Warner. Ty Warner is the owner of Beanie Babies, right? Ty, the company. And, right away I got a call from them and said, hey, we want to interview for the job for running vice president of sales. So I went over there and right away we hit it off. Very dynamic guy. Interview took 3 hours, sitting there and everything that we lined up in our belief on how to go to business, the strategy, brand equity. The guy is a genius at marketing. If you really take the message and how he talks and look at the message of what he's saying, it's really dynamic. And right away we hit it off. And so our first assignment was to fix our North American sales. He was all the way down to 65 million in sales from the Beanie Babies. So we went out, we invented Beanie Boos, came back, we were out there for 6 months, and then came back and then launched Beanie Boos into the marketplace. And lo and behold, sticking to our brand equity of Thai, the way we dealt with the retailers and consumers, the way we merchandise, made everything so simple that the brand took off. And plus the big glitter eyes was just like a major hit. And so I remember one day telling them back in 2010, I said, hey, I'm going to take Beanie Boos global. I'm going to take them across the world. And, I was at Nuremberg Toy Fair. I got the fever of how right away I had the big, it's kind of like walking into a house and you know exactly how you're going to decorate it. I went to Nuremberg and I knew exactly how I was going to launch the product. And I remember we were walking down the stairs. He sat down laughing. He took $1 out of his pocket and he said, here's your marketing fund. Good luck. And he said, by the way, make sure that's your night job, not your day job. So I took that as a big challenge, and I went over, and the first person I signed was Germany, a guy from Carletto. But the biggest dynamic of global sales and global marketing and global distribution, it's so different than America. In America, you get in Walmart, you're in all the Walmarts across the United States. You get in Walgreens, you're in all the Walgreens. You go over to Germany, it's not that way. You have Kaufhof, you have Karstadt, you have, Merke, you have, only those accounts that are in Germany. And you have German language. So it's not like if you get in one account, you have all of Europe. So you have to find the best distribution and who does it the best. So I spent 3 weeks in the market going to all the retail shops, actually looking at who's in the retail, how they merchandise, how they go to business, how well are they, and from a relationship rapport with the retailer, and then just took a list and finally came down to 3 of them. I met with all 3 of them, and then I picked one of them, which was Carletto, and I said, okay, this is how I'm going to go to business. And so then I had them buy everything FOB China. They brought over the goods. They had their own distribution. They had their own distribution rights with those retailers, and that's how we went to business. So then I did that every country. After Germany, I went to Spain. After Spain, I went to UK. After UK, I went to France. After France, I went to Italy. So country by country, 140 countries later, is across the globe. And so everybody thinks of Thai as Beanie Babies, but actually Beanie Boos was way bigger than Beanie Babies because Beanie Babies was just, Canada and the US and a little bit of UK. Beanie Boos was global. So, they were just, 300 containers practically every day of product going out across the world. So, but there you learned how every market, every geography, every culture, every language is so different from going to Spain, going to France. So you really had to know the dynamics of the market and how you're going to brand it. We did a lot of grassroots marketing because of that. The fact being, my goal was to have a Thai window and a Thai display, kind of like when you see those big Lego things. I wanted a big tie display in the window in the busiest street, so Oxford and Regent Street, we wanted Hamleys. We wanted all those windows. We wanted Palisades, Calais Palisades, and Madrid, Spain. It's the busiest street where all the merchants are. So we got the biggest window in Fnac. We went to business. Then we did the same thing on the street with Cortez and Glaze. Then the same thing in France. We wanted Haussmann Street. That's the big shopping center, the Mecca. So that's where we targeted to really say, okay, if we could get that brand awareness and get that perception with the consumer in every one of those countries, then we were going to have something big. And we did. That really went well for us. And then from there, from Thai, after traveling 400,000 to 500,000 miles a year, I kind of got tired. I had the opportunity to run Osmodee. So I went over to Osmodee, and from Osmodee, then I had an opportunity to run MJ Holding, which is all your Pokemon, all of your sports trading cards, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic the Gathering, and ran that all of the sales and all of the product CSO and CMO and CPO for them for 3 years, and then came over to Precious Moments. At Precious Moments, I've been here for almost 3 years, and Precious Moments, I remember getting a phone call from one of my friends who's a headhunter, and I've never taken a job from her, but we're really good friends. And she said, "Do me a favor, don't hang up." She goes, "I have an opportunity. This is perfect for you." And I was like, "Okay." And she said, "Precious Moments." I said, "Are they still, around?" Because the iconic brand, everybody knows it, but it's you don't have that perception unless you're really looking for Precious Moments. And she said, "I want you to meet with the owners. You're going to love them." And I said, "Great." Yeah. So I talked to them on the phone, arranged a trip for seeing them in Carthage, fell in love with them. Great ownership, great family, which is the son of the founder, Sam Butcher, just passed away about a month ago. And the two brothers and the sister are running the company. And as soon as I walked into the facilities, it's kind of like I said, walking to a house. I knew exactly how I wanted to build the company back up. So we really diversified. 2 years growing over 50%. It's been great. I mean, got into a full plush line that's in 20,000 accounts now. An Animal Quest line that's in 20,000 accounts, which is like an animal figurine line. We got all of our novelty toys, which is in about 20,000 accounts. So we grew our account base by 20,000 doors, and which is phenomenal. But it really is the brand equity of Precious Moments, and it's really helped, I believe, the brand overall, because now it's making it relevant again. I think the biggest thing is that Precious Moments was always known, but it wasn't relevant because they were always marketing to the same consumer. And now they're able to market to an overall bigger consumer base. And we're, away from the collectible market into more that, hey, it's a cool, great gift. It's a very impulsive gift that means faith, love, hope, and means family. So that's really caught on a lot. And then we did a couple really good things by really signing in with some of the top licenses around the world. So now we've always had Disney. We just signed Peanuts, Sesame Street, Rudolph, Luma Stella, which is Elf on the Shelf, Warner Brothers, and Strawberry Shortcake. So I think it's really helped broaden the brand, opened up the marketplace for other consumers to now that enjoy those licenses, now to enjoy those licenses under the Precious Moment brand. So it's been a great ride. A lot of mentors, like I said, between Tom Howe, Ty Warner, Matt Bear over at MJ Holding. I've learned a lot, learned a ton. So I owe a lot to them.
That's awesome. And I see how each role positively sort of impacted the next one and enabled you to then take that experience and sort of launch it into your next stage. And I mean, I'm curious, right? So, you've got over 25 years of experience sort of leading these consumer good companies. Have you seen or maybe what's the most significant shift you've witnessed in consumer behavior over the years?
I would say the two shifts. One of them obviously being onlinesales.com. So it's kind of changed the dynamics of the consumer behavior and how they shop. I would say number two is the fact of how that's trickled down to brick and mortar. And, COVID had a lot to change too, because it changed a lot of the overall consumer habits. Before you had your .com, which was more of your younger generation, but it really taught the older generation how to shop online also. So
Yep.
I think the good of it is that, the profitability of .com sales are much greater for a company. But I think overall, when you're looking at expanding and diversifying your brand and having that coexistence of, of the whole shopper consumer experience, you still really need brick and mortar, right? It's hard to tie things in online where it's really easier to bundle them in. It's kind of like what we were talking about, having a Diet Coke and a bag of chips. You can't really do that on .com, but you could sure do it on brick and mortar, right? So it's very impulsive. And I think the trick for brick and mortar is, I think brick and mortar will always be around, and I think it'll soon thrive again, is that they really got to learn how to merchant better and really be more dynamic and figure out how to get more dollars per shopping cart in every shopping experience. I mean, that's the trick. How to turn a $20 shopping experience into a 25 or 30. I mean, if you figure, look at Walmart, how many shoppers they have per day. If they could get $2 more per shopping cart, that's huge increase in business.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the interesting dynamic there. And then I think the other consumer, behavior is really how marketing has changed from, I got 7 TVs in my house and not one of them's ever on, ever. I have an 11-year-old daughter. She comes over with her friends, and the only time the TV's on when they're mirroring their phone from YouTube or TikTok. So the whole marketing strategy has changed to be more social media. If you're not tackling social media and grabbing the emotion, right? Everything's about emotion with the consumer. You got to grab their emotion and their passion of what they want, because it's just too easy for them to swipe to the next. So I think that that's really the trick of how we have to change from a manufacturer supplier talking to our consumers.
And so I'm curious, because if, say, someone has a brand, they're doing well, right? The brand is growing. Do you feel like there's a certain size or revenue number or whatever it is where then they should push into retail if they're not in there? And then maybe a follow-up question to that is, I know this would be different for every brand, but should they be thinking about opening their own brick and mortar, becoming sort of a Lululemon type situation, or should they be trying to get into other stores and testing the waters there?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think from if you're a one-stop or just a couple SKU, then you want to build yourself on .com. But I think then if you're going to last and really invigorate your brand, you've got to be brick and mortar, right? Not only is it because of what it'll do for diversifying your brand, but just brand awareness with the consumer. The more they see it, the more awareness your brand's going to bring, and the more equity it's going to have. Where before, if you're just .com, then it's kind of like a rifle shot versus a shotgun. The .com's a rifle shot. They're looking for something specific, and if they're not asking the right search words, they're never going to find you. Where brick and mortar is like a shotgun. You're there, people see you, and you have more impulsiveness with the consumer of them buying your brand.
Yeah.
And if you're going to expand, right, you've got to be brick and mortar, because where are you going to expand to? Now, someone like Lululemon, if you're an overall concept where you have a whole apparel line and you have a whole concept of a brand image, then you've got to open up your own shops, because you'll die everywhere else. You either open up your own shops or have a shopping shop, but not too many shops in a shop have been successful. You have some people, I believe, that are being successful. Like you'll see Claire's now popping up in supermarkets. That seems to be successful. You have, Starbucks inside of a Target. That's successful, but that's far few in between.
Yeah. And those are those are like some of those are franchises, right? Which then can be very different. And then I think
Right.
Target can then own the franchise. Like, sure, yeah, it gets a bit different, but yeah. But then to your point, yeah, absolutely right. It's can be some of the best ways to expand really quickly. I mean, I feel like it's you maybe your margins are less, but on the other hand, digital's competitive. It's not, it's not
Yeah.
easy. Like we're talking with a lot of brands lately where they're actually going retail first, then digital after, because they're finding that it's a bigger opportunity for them to get more, to get the right margins at the right time in order, and versus just, I'm going to lose 100,000 just testing marketing campaigns that may or may not give me a positive ROI, et cetera.
I've done both. At Precious Moments, we went to retail first, and which I think is going to be the biggest driving and mover in the next 5 years is scan-based trading. So scan-based trading is where you're actually managing space within a retail. So we did this with Walgreens. So Walgreens says, hey, here's your footprint. You're responsible for this footprint. You bring the product. We deliver it to every store. We don't go through their warehouse. We merchandise it. When it sells, we get paid for it. So now it really puts the onus on the manufacturer and supplier by saying, hey, I better have a good product, because if I don't sell, that product's going to sit there and I don't collect my cash. But if it sells great, I get high turns, then, you're golden. And, we manage that space. So now I'm also responsible for saying, hey, what are the trends? What's the best color plush? What's the best animal plush? And it really is on me now to really have the product development to make the product that's going to turn the best of what the consumer wants. So it's really smart from the retailer. They don't own any inventory. They're no cash out. So all the buying dollars are secure. They make their profit as soon as it sells. So they're kind of like, it's almost like renting the space. The hard part for the manufacturer suppliers is that we're responsible for damage and shrink, which is kind of hard. So then you got to pick your poison. If I want to be in Walgreens, do I want to be in the Walgreens and, and certain cities that have high theft? Probably not. Right. So it's really a margin game from there than being smart, saying, okay, what is the best placement for me? What's the best, demographics for me? What is the best trend setting for me? And we have hot zones. So we have this thing called map line, which it tells us, hey, here's where our product sells in different parts of the geography of the United States. And we could really then hone in on those demographics and that geography by saying, this is the type of items that we're going to have there, because this is what's selling. And it's kind of funny. It's like, you would think on the East Coast, right? And on the West Coast, they both like aquatic. Well, no, only on the West Coast. On the East Coast, they don't like aquatic. They still like, all the, the unicorns and, all the elephants and fox and zebras and stuff. So it's very interesting that you really teach yourself and you learn a lot by the data that's given to you, which is another great thing about scan-based trading, is that every day I get data by store of exactly what's selling. So I could tell you, hey, here's where all the foxes are selling. Here's where all the elephants are selling. I have all that data every day to make better quantitative decisions on what's best for my business.
I love that. You're not making assumptions. You're looking at the data. You're making educated decisions. You're understanding.
And I'm learning by my failures. And I'm learning by my failures, right? Yeah. I'm allowed to test and see what doesn't work and say, okay, stop that, right? That's not working, right? Yeah. I mean, my biggest success is by learning by my mistakes. I mean, God, I've had a lot of wins. I've had a lot of losses too. So if you learn by the losses and your failures, it's really not failing. It's learning. That's the way I look at it.
I'm with you there. Two very unsuccessful businesses allowed me to launch a very successful business.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? They weren't failed. They just weren't very successful.
Yeah, you're talking about building blocks, right? I mean, from the snack food days, being there for 21 years, my God, I learned so many things not to do, right? And, my mentor would grab me and say, stop doing that. Have you not learned yet? I'm like, yeah, I've learned, but, sometimes, you can't help yourself. And he says, well, help yourself.
I love that.
But I remember my first big lesson was, you know, Jay's Potatoes was owned by the Jack family, and the owner was like, founder was like 81 years old, and I just got promoted, and I saw him, and he sat down with me in his office, says, "Hey, I want you to do this, 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 this." I said, "Okay, Mr. Jap, I'll try." And he took his pencil, he whipped it on the ground, and you're going back to like, you know, in the 90s. Whipped it on the ground. He said, "Try picking that pencil up." He said, "Either you do it or you don't. Don't tell me you're going to try." And I was like, oh my God. And I'm like 26 years old. I just became the youngest vice president in the snack world, and I'm sweating bullets. I'm thinking this guy's going to kill me.
I love it. I'm curious because now you've done it a few times. So in your view, what are like maybe some critical factors that turn a company from being a market participant into a market leader?
I think point of difference. If you're not screaming your point of difference to the consumer and saying what the benefit is to them, then you're not building the brand. You're not, making the point of difference. So point of difference could be better quality. It could be size. It could be price. To me, I mean, depends on like precious moments. It's about quality. It's about quality and value, right? So we're really trying to, do that as well as saying, hey, we're an emotional purchase. We're something that's a feel good. We're trying to celebrate the precious moments in people's lives, right? That really get to their soul. So, I mean, that's the one benefit of what we have in precious moments versus selling snacks, right? When you're selling snacks, you're not hitting their soul, you're hitting their stomach. And, so that to me, if you don't have a point of difference and you're not screaming that point of difference, then you're not going to ever have the brand equity that you want.
Yeah. Do you feel like you lean, because I know you mentioned emotions earlier, right? And as far as like your marketing goes and your social media goes and things like that, do you feel like you try to tie that back into an emotion or a benefit to the end consumer, or sometimes you may or may not be able, your advantage point may or may not be that, be able to be tied to that?
I try to hit the emotion. Everything from plush to the toys to some are easier. Like obviously the precious moment figurines are much easier to do than anything because those you look at a precious moment and you should know right away by looking at it what that message is, right? It's all about the messaging. On the plush, to me, plush is very emotional. It starts with the eyes. The biggest thing that consumer does is they look at the eyes just like looking at a person. So they either then like it or they don't like it. So to me, it's everything has an emotional attachment. It's just how deep that emotional attachment goes.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Yeah. And the precious
It's
moments has got to
pretty
be,
hard to get like the emotion with the slime. The slime's like the dazzle, right? You want to dazzle the consumer.
yeah.
But everything else is about emotion.
Yeah. Well, and Precious Moments, I feel like is amazing at that. But on the flip side, then you probably have endless possibilities, and then you're like probably start leaning into, well, is how many moms fish with their sons? Do I want a mom fishing with a son? Right? Like, right. I feel like there's endless possibilities, but then on the other hand, right, you're like, okay, is there a market for this or not? And where are we going to sell this?
I'll tell you what my goal is at Precious Moments with the figurine business. Is to figure out a way where I could celebrate the most precious moments for every individual's life on a separate note. So if you would think, I'd ask you, what's the best moment you have of your memory of maybe your mom and dad? And then I can make a figurine that would help you with that moment. That to me is a win. That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it'll be inheriting my mom's precious moments.
Oh.
So, I mean, now, right, in your experience leading multi-channel distribution globally, what's your process for maybe identifying, or, maybe what's like the biggest challenge in aligning product design, sourcing, and then sales strategies?
Everything starts with product development, right? So, I mean, you really have to know your audience, whether it's, here, China, France, Germany. You got to know your audience and you got to know what that audience wants. And then you have to adhere to that from a culture standpoint, from a language standpoint. And then once you got that down, then it's like, okay, how do I channel that from a sourcing, right? To me, I mean, I'm a sourcing expert. So that to me is like, that's the easiest part, right? It's always fine. It's easy to find distribution within that country to do that. And it's easy to get the goods over there. Then it's from the fact of how do you market it once you're in that country? How do you draw that consumer then to what you're trying to appeal to them? I think that's the hard part. And once you got that licked, then it's just, then you're churning the business. Then you got their awareness and then you're building.
Did you test different markets out before you launched into them to find is the product actually a fit for this
at precious
culture?
Moments, we've been really concentrating on just building up the U.S. right now and Canada. But I will tell you from other companies, especially like Thai, where I did most of my global, we did a lot of test marketing, a lot of, I would actually go into a place like Harrods or Hamleys and say, hey, I want to build, we did this at Harrods. We built a kind of like a Thai schoolhouse that was this huge thing in the middle of Harrods with all our plush around. And I said, I'm going to fill it for free. I'll buy the house. I'll build the house. I'm going to make it a plaything for all the kids to come to in your toy section. And I'm going to put all the plush around it, everything for free, just to see if I could not be successful at Harrods in UK, I was not going to be successful in UK. So boom, it just took off like crazy. One of my best stories from any customer was Hamleys. I had a big challenge of every year, all of Europe is launched Christmas through Hamleys, Oxford and Regent Street. They close the street down. They have these huge windows that they slowly rise. They have an MC. They have the band. They have the opera there. It's just like a huge event, videotaped and across all of Europe. And it's like the grand opening of Christmas for Europe. And Hamleys is like a big deal, right? That is like the toy store of toy stores around the world. And, I convinced them, it's always Lego, Barbie, Hasbro, it's all your big players. And somehow I convinced them that I was going to have the best windows they've ever had. I had the top company come in and did all this automated, things that were the plush moves. And, we did at the London skyline, and we did a thing of Peter Pan. It was just phenomenal. And I pulled it off. And it was probably the most successful launch Hamleys ever had. And I mean, I had everyone went mad at me. Lego was mad at me. They're all screaming at me. How did you do this? How did you get away with this? And it really launched our brand throughout Europe. And we did the Hamley windows 3 years in a row. So you'll see on YouTube, I'm cutting the ribbon and big hoopla. And to this day, I can't believe I pulled that off. And I would say that's my biggest, retail story of really selling and really being successful. But I mean, it was just perfect timing. Perfect timing. That was really the big launch of Beanie Boos throughout Europe. So
yeah, take the risk, right? Take the risk and then figure it out. It sounds like.
Yeah, I could tell you some. I could tell you some losing ones too.
Well,
I first opened up Australia and I had the wrong distributor and I lost like about $400,000 or $500,000. I was just like, oh, what did I do? And I corrected it. I learned not to do that in other, I got overzealous of what I was listening to what I was being told versus what was actual reality. And we get caught in that hoopla but you learn and you move on and, now I look at it was a small little blip versus, the hundreds of millions of dollars that we made, in.
I mean, it's interesting when you said you got to precious moments and you saw immediately what you wanted to do. And I mean, now you've really successfully revitalized brands, across your career. What's your process for identifying those areas for improvement and then sort of implementing change within a brand?
There's no golden process. I think it's a lot of passion. I think it's a lot of, I mean, it's just like anything else in life. You're not going to do it well unless you're passionate toward it. I mean, I'm all about passion. I don't do things unless I'm passionate. And I think right away I was passionate toward Don and John Butcher, the two brothers of the family, and also Deb. And right away I had a very cohesive relationship with them and, the brand itself. And I just could see where the brand had not been properly taken care of for a while because it wasn't marketed. And we're still not done. We're not even, I would say, 25% there. I think that, we're going to revitalize and have it relevant more by even coming out with, we're launching a whole new brand off of the Precious Moments next year, which is going to be really cool. It's going to be kind of like a Funko type of product, but Precious Moments. So I'm really excited about that. And when we did our cutie patooties, the cutie patooties are all with the Precious Moment eyes. So it really, I was actually shocked because when I first started going into distribution with the retailers with that, I thought they wouldn't want the Precious Moment logo on there, but everyone knew the Precious Moment eyes. And then, the buyer said, we're getting a lot of complaints why you don't have Precious Moments on the logo of that. I was like, they're right. So, using, just the simple Precious Moment iconic eyes and then tying that to the logo and using it at other brands. It was a home run.
When you're doing that, so like, yeah, you're talking about launching, this whole new, almost like a new brand in a way, right? And you've kind of done this a bunch of times. Do you try to maintain a balance sort of between driving like short-term sales and also fostering sort of that long-term brand equity? I mean, I feel like some of these brands have, like Precious Moment, been around for a really long time, right? But
45 years, right?
But Ty, you said you had to like revitalize it at a point, right? And you kind of had to like bring it out of right. I feel like Beanie Babies kind of was probably in the recession point, right, at that point.
Exactly.
And then you had to kind of bring it back. But then, some of these tactics, it's like, okay, it's might bring short-term sales depending, right? Like, do you feel like, I guess, how do you maintain a balance between those?
It's hard because you're talking about a trend versus evergreen, right? Trend is where, it's kind of funny. Trends usually last as long as when it takes a while for them to peak, and that the downturn is the same as the peak. So take, for example, fidget spinners, right? Everybody had a fidget spinner like 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. They were really hot for about 6 months, and in 6 months they die. Where you take something like Beanie Boos, they've been on trend for 15 years. So how do you make it more of a evergreen versus a trend? And to me, it's how you market it, how you brand it, how you launch it, how you don't become greedy. So a lot of people are just so greedy, they'll just pump product out in the marketplace and then, go to every distribution channel. Where we're going to go more of a systematic, have mini launches, bring out the product line to where people could enjoy it, not overstuff the market, you don't want to be greedy and you want to have a longer launch and really have people enjoy the line. The hard part is what kind of type of consumer are you going after and what's the age group. The younger the age group, the shorter the trend, right? Because social media is so fast, right? The trends are so fast in social media. So then the older age group, they seem to enjoy it longer. So you really have to then target the right audience and do it the right way, and don't get greedy. Have it a nice, affordable price. Don't go to your mass markets and, where you have no price control, and really, launch it the right way.
Well, and I feel like there's those products in the space that blow up when they're out of stock too. It's like, I think of the Tickle Me Elmos back in the day, right? I think of so difficult to get certain models, right? I think of like the Squishmallows now, right? It's like I only heard of like I don't, I now I have nieces and whatever that I buy stuff for, but like at the time I felt like the only time I heard about them when everyone was like, "Oh, you can't find them anywhere. If you find it, you might as well just buy it because you could sell it for double online." And I'm like, "Wait, what is this thing?" Right? And that's when everybody started talking about it, right? So I feel like you're kind of onto something with that statement a little bit, right? Is like you kind of have to have a little bit of FOMO in there, without kind of like you said, oversaturating the market.
We used to play a little game. I do it a little bit now, where we used to only ship certain styles of Beanie Boos to even zip codes and other styles to odd zip codes. So you have it where everybody sees them online. You have it to where your cousins have them or your friends have them, and you can't find them. And then, lo and behold, later on, you switch it up, right? So you kind of like, you anger I always call it anger and feed. You anger the monster, you feed the monster.
I love that.
It's a marketing ploy, but I mean, you also, if you give everybody what they want at once, they all want it at once, but they really don't want it at once. Because then the enjoyment's over.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's probably a strategy that helps the retailers as well, because it's right, because it gets me coming back. Like I'm an addict of.
We've done it at Walgreens. We did it with Bush Babies. You want it to where that consumer's going to more one. I mean, traffic is everything for retailer. It's everything, right? So if you get them to go to multi Walgreens, you're winning. I mean, I remember we did a case study at NJ Holding with Walmart on trading cards, Pokemon. I mean, Pokemon was bringing in 6% of the traffic at a Walmart. Now think about that. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And I remember they'd be in the aisles waiting because they started figuring out what day our delivery was to Walmart. So you'd have the Pokemon collectors sitting in the aisle waiting for us to merchandise the Pokemon cards so they could take them. Oh. And then you always knew the people that were stealing because they had a scale, right? So the foil cards weighed a little bit more than the regular cards. So they would weigh them and then know which ones were the foil cards and they would steal them.
Oh, man. Next level.
It was crazy.
Next level. Crazy. Yeah, it's like that's a big percentage. That's unreal. I mean,
it is.
And then do you use that as any, do you use that to your advantage with the retailer?
If you could tell a retailer that, hey, we're drawing this much traffic in, and then you take that to other retailers saying this is what we're doing at XYZ, it's gold.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, kind of like Cutie Patooties, which is our plush line at Precious Moments. I mean, soon enough, we're going to be able to prove that we're bringing in traffic into Walgreens. And, Walgreens is going to love that. They're going to say, yeah, you know what? You're driving this much more traffic into our stores that we weren't going to get, or maybe not get as often.
Yeah. Yeah.
So once we announce a launch and we say, hey, launching next week at all the Walgreens stores, kids are listening to that. And they're going to go to Walgreens. They're going to be begging their mom to go to Walgreens.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yep.
So looking ahead, what are some maybe exciting trends or developments you see kind of shaping the future of the consumer goods industry?
I would say our new Precious Moment line.
Love it. I love it.
I think that, kids are so fickle, right? From a fidget toys are always going to be big. So, I watch my daughter with her friends watching YouTube and TikTok of people eating. It's a big thing now, just because they could hear the different crunches in people's mouths. It's kind of weird, but that's anything that makes a certain noise or does a certain thing, that's a trend. But I think too that, I'm not going to say that today's consumer is a collector, but today's a consumer of emotional purchase. So if they like the DC Comics or Harry Potter, they're going to go after that. If they like the message, we're all about messaging at Precious Moments with our figurine business. So, the better we get at messaging, the more we learn from the consumer what they're looking for, the more that's going to be of a trend. So it's hitting the emotional part of the consumer.
Yeah. I love that. I'm curious. You've mentioned mentors a lot, and you've mentioned, right, you before we even hit record, you mentioned you've had awesome mentors. You've been super fortunate, and since we hit record, you've kind of mentioned mentors a few times. Where a few times it kind of just sounded like you're talking about your boss. Maybe I'm wrong, but you didn't say boss. You clearly said mentor every time. I'm curious. Number one, sort of, how did you secure these mentors? Because I think it's very an important thing. I think no matter who you are and where you are in your career, you should always be getting mentors, and those could be people in your industry, at your place of work. It could be others outside, anything, right? But I'm curious, like, yeah, how did you secure them? Is it something you sought out, or yeah, what does that
I
look like?
think positive energy and passion attracts positive energy and passion. So I think by nature, people get attracted to each other. And if you have the right person with the right attitude, with the right karma, that's a positive and passionate, they will figure out how to take care of each other. So, as I progressed in my life, I vowed two things: to be around positive people and be around passionate people. And that's how I build my teams. The one thing I cannot teach is passion. And the one thing I know is that passion attracts passion and positive attracts positive. And once you have that going, I always call it the it factor. Every once in a great while, you meet people that have the it factor. And you can't measure it on paper. You just could measure it only in your gut and your heart. So I think that I've been fortunate enough to have the same personality as some of my mentors and just match up with them. And it's nothing that you can quantify on paper or anything that you could strategize. It just happens. And I think I've been fortunate by having those same type of people around me that, have developed me. And I give a lot of that. I'm very much like my dad. My dad's the same way. And my biggest mentor is my dad, right? 5 years old. He taught me the hard rope, hard-headed Polak, very stubborn, but very passionate in everything he does, and a great teacher. And, just by watching his behavior more than anything, it has developed me the person I am. And then just using that as my career goes along. My biggest accomplishment now in life is I'm successful. I've got my, rewards from being successful. Is how could I now give my passion and my positive energy to people around me, whether it's workers, whether it's, friends, whether it's family. I mean, I've learned one big lesson in life. Don't be afraid to tell someone that you're passionate about them and that you love them. So,
yeah, I love that. And it's super addictive. I think I think absolutely right. Like I can feel that from you, but it's definitely something, right? It would be easy to just come and work there and be like, well, we sell like corny figurines to old people. What do we do? Like, right? And just be like, it's lame, right? But then on the flip side, how you've explained it, right? Like the impact that it can actually have on someone's life is actually pretty big, right? Like it's an actually impactful product that actually stands for something and has this family oriented, and like you said, right? The faith in all these aspects that you're like, oh, I could get behind this, right? Oh, this is cool. So then it's like almost something where, well, and that happens to me a lot, right? It's like, especially when I interview people, because I'm the same, really passionate. Someone kind of comes in and they're like, all right, yeah, I'm just interviewing for this like business, whatever. And then when we finish, I was talking to a recruiting company the other day and they're like, everyone that interviews with you doesn't want to talk to anybody else anymore. They only want to talk to you because whatever you did, right? And I'm like, and I think it's that. Right. I think you nailed it. Right. It's because I'm a very positive person. And then I have this passion towards what I do. Otherwise I wouldn't do it. And so then that becomes a little bit of addictive, right? Like not addictive. It kind of rubs off on other people as well.
Well, okay. For the first 5 minutes of us talking, right away, I knew you and I were going to hit it off. We're same type of personalities, same energy, same kind of passion. So, I mean, that tells it right there. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the kind of people you want to attract to, and, just, it's kind of funny though. Like we have our Precious Moment Club, right? Those club members are, 60, 70, 80, some 50s and 40s. But man, you want to talk about passion? Oh my God. We have our master sculptor, Hiko, that we have go to SeaWorld and Busch Gardens and Disney and some of the hallmarks. They travel around the world to sit, watch this guy sculpt and get his autograph. That's how passionate they are about that. So, some people think that's crazy. What's crazy about it? Everybody's got their passion in life.
Yeah.
Let them have theirs.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what makes us fun, right? And what makes us unique. Otherwise, we'd all be boring and driving around the same car and everything else. No, thank you. No, thank you.
Thank you is right.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, maybe last question, any piece of advice you'd give any other aspiring leaders or entrepreneurs out there?
Just some of the lessons I learned is probably listen more than speak. Learn from other people as much as you possibly can. Never stop learning. Never stop teaching. Be passionate about what you're doing or don't do it. And, just remember that what you are working on today will impact the lives of your workers and your retailers tomorrow. So it's pretty critical thinking if you think about it, is that, we're here to make very, tough decisions, but they could be very good decisions if you, are listening to the right people and doing the right things.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And I feel like sometimes you have to reflect on that stuff too, because, right, I feel like it's so easy for us to not realize, hey, the last 6 months led to this huge monumental thing first off. So, hey, I got to focus on these little things and that. But then on the other hand, you kind of go from thing to thing to thing and you kind of forget, like, whoa, did you realize what we did back there? Like, that was pretty awesome.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Love it. Well, really appreciate the advice and all the insights and everything you've shared, John. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. It was so easy. You're great. You're fantastic.